They lost to the Bruins over the weekend. They were leading them after 40 minutes, and they found themselves still losing that game anyway after a brutal third period. Is there anything the Canadiens can do at this point?
I actually see them as a little different than Vancouver. Not to say that everything should be rosy there, but it feels like they've turned a lot of wins into losses. Like whether it's leading against Boston, whether the game against Vegas they played a week or so ago, the shots were like 22-1 in the first period or whatever it was. I do think that there are more indicators there that this team probably will start to win more games at some point in the near future. But, based on how they've started, the hope of a playoff chase, like I don't know what the players are saying. I'm guessing because they're players and their job is to win and winning is fun. They're probably focused on trying to get in the playoff race. But, with each passing day, it just becomes less likely. The question of Marc Bergevin is still hanging out there. Like at this point in time, I'm pretty confident he's not going to be their GM next season.
Mm-hmm.
Like quite confident. It would take an abrupt change of heart from one or both sides for that to happen. And so the question now becomes like, how does that play out? Is that a change made in season? I still believe they're going to hire a Francophone general manager after him. So, when you look at it through that scope, Julian, it's a little different than even say what Anaheim and Chicago are looking at with their GM searches right now. Like I think those organizations, like they're looking at candidates in the moment, but they have the idea that maybe they'll just stay status quo until the offseason and see who else might come available. Well, when you're hiring a Francophone GM, and Julian Brisebois would be the most prominent name you could have. And he signed a long-term deal in Tampa. Obviously, he's not going anywhere for the Lightning. The Canadiens don't have the same challenge in terms of that replacement because they're drawing from a smaller pool of people. In this case, they'll be drawing from someone who isn't currently a general manager. And so I think they could make that hire in season. And so that to me is the change that we could see there. Obviously maybe flip, then they're going to do rebuilding things. I mean, the draft is in Montreal in June. So I think they're going to probably try to trade a couple of veteran players before the deadline, turn them into draft picks, move the program forward that way. And so, well, it's, you can give me the pulse there better than I can feel it. I don't know that is as awful of an outcome, say, as Vancouver, because I think anyone being realistic in their front office or head office was kind of knew that a lot changed. Like they had all their cards in and they got to the Cup final last year, but I don't think anyone really believed they were going to be a true contender yet, especially with what happened with Carey Price, Shea Weber, just a lot of change at key positions, losing Phil Deneau and free agency. And so I think the Bergevin question has to be answered sooner than later. But then once you get that new GM in place and a fresh set of eyes on things, I don't see it as being chaotic as what's happening in Vancouver. I don't know that the same degree of changes are needed to get them back on course.
And I mean, Canadiens fans, you mentioned it, the fact that they have seen their team go to a Stanley Cup final, at least they can go back to that memory as opposed to Vancouver Canucks fans who have been sold hope. They are supposed to be ascending with the core that they have, and they are not ascending to the heights that they should be at least at the Canadiens with the pieces that they have. They could still be better down the line, but also there are questions with the way they develop players as well. But still, they can at least say they've seen their team go to a Cup final. So, yeah, I mean, if they could do I'm not sure if they could do anything right now, but in terms of the pulse as well, the city too, it's kind of weird. It's like a weird yo-yoing effect where it's like, okay, well, maybe the Canadiens can build up a momentum when they get a decent result and then they suck. And then you have guys going on rants asking if what Jeff Molson's going to do, if he's at his breaking point, right? Like it's a very weird time.
That's Montreal. Why I feel like it's inevitable that there's some, I don't know if Bergevin I don't know how it'll go down, but I don't think he'll coach or GM through the whole season. I think, especially if they keep losing and sort of the pressure grows around that situation, it's just the easiest card to play. And honestly, it's a card they should be looking to play, because if he's moving on, which it seems like he is, like they should want to identify who that next person is as soon as possible, get them in the door, get them to get their eyes on things. Because, most GMs, the first year in the job, like you're just figuring out what you have, like top to bottom, if you have the right people in the right places in terms of the structure of your hockey operations department, the players themselves, the prospects you have coming, coaches, like there's a lot to evaluate. Like you can't just come in and, start making a bunch of moves. I mean, most GMs usually are take a little while to, you'll make the obvious moves. You know, I think Ben Sherrod, for example, is a free agent. Yes. Probably a player that I think it's the type of player we see moved every year at the trade deadline. Like that's a sort of obvious move that you play that card. But in terms of bigger organizational decisions, that's going to take some time. And so, you know, why leave everyone just dwindling out here? You know, it's the elephant in the room. I think it'll need to be addressed at some point soon.
I want to mention one more Canadian team, the Edmonton Oilers. We all know how good Connor McDavid has been. We all know how the Oilers have been. But we haven't talked all that much about Leon Draisaitl and the fact that he leads the league in goals and points. What do you think of, and McDavid also, shout out to him, he did reach 600 points in his career. Leon Draisaitl is also having himself a pretty good start to the year as well. What do you make of those two players? They're pretty much Hart Trophy candidates right now. I'd love to see a situation where we're seeing those two duel throughout the entire season to figure out who wins the Hart Trophy. What do you make of these two guys and their starts so far?
This is a problem I find we have in our sport, honestly. When guys set the bar as high as Draisaitl and McDavid have in previous years, you know, won multiple Rocket Richards and Harts and all that stuff. And it's almost like we've run out of ways to talk about them. Like it just becomes accepted wisdom that they're great and they're great offensive players. And everyone knows that. But I do think we might be sleeping on these guys a little bit, like how great they've been to start this year. You know, Leon Draisaitl is averaging over 2 points a game. You know, we're 14 games into the season. Like this is a not insignificant amount of time. Connor McDavid has a point in every single game the Oilers have played this year. Like they're both on pace for more than 150 points. Nikita Kucherov a couple years ago had 128. That's the highest total we've seen in 25 years in the NHL. And these guys might beat them by 20 or 30.
That's insane.
It's bananas. You know, Draisaitl has 15 goals, I believe, in 14 games as a recording.
Yes, 31 points.
I don't think 50 and 50 is possible for anybody nowadays. Like, we're watching Alex Ovechkin, the greatest goal scorer probably ever, and he never really truly threatened that mark. Like, he's had times where he had like 25 through 25, give or take, but like he never really ever went at that. And you know, you look at Leon Draisaitl's shooting percentage, so it's around 30%. Like, I don't think there's any reasonable belief that he can actually challenge 50 and 50, but like he might score 60, which is pretty magical mark too in hockey now. Like Steven Stamkos did it early in his career. I think Ovechkin did it once. I think he got to 65, but like nobody gets to 60 anymore. And Draisaitl will have a great chance. I still think Austin Matthews, I know he's had a slow start. Wouldn't surprise me if he gets hot and takes a similar kind of assault this year. But, you know, all told, like these guys are, you know, tonight is the Hockey Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Like these guys are already Hall of Famers and they're like 25. Like it's insane. But I think you should appreciate the greatness in real time. It's kind of what I was thinking about. And, you know, I do think a little bit in the sport, we just go like, oh yeah, well, McDavid, of course, but it's like, this is even better. He's got like 150 points his last 82 games played. Like it's insane. And it's not, there's no one else doing this in the league. What's cool is that they've about almost split 50-50 their time playing together at 5-on-5 and not this year. So like sometimes they're together, sometimes they're compiling these points separately on different lines. You know, obviously they're both part of the best power play in the league, and it's been the best power play in the league for a couple seasons now. And that helps them, I think, reach totals that other guys can't get to. But, you know, there's something special going on there. And I think, honestly, it should put a ton of pressure on their management. There's pressure on every manager everywhere, don't get me wrong, but to make sure that the right moves are made before the deadline to at least put the odds a little bit more in your favor of a long playoff run. Cause that's the one thing they're missing in Edmonton. Obviously something they're missing in Toronto, like a lot of places where you've got these great players, but we haven't seen them really have big magical springs. I think that's the sort of the next step for this group.
Never get bored of Connor McDavid, and I extend that to Leon Draisaitl as well. Like a 1-2 punch we haven't seen in quite some time in the National Hockey League. If you
they're
had
ruthless.
They're amazing. Like I also still think it's rather rough that ESPN, they have not made a commitment to air more Oilers games on their main channels because they have the best player in the world, two of the best players in the world. And fine, it's in Edmonton, but they're the best players in the world. Americans should be able to watch them a little bit more regularly. I don't know how many times they get to watch Leafs games and watch Austin Matthews, but they should be able to watch Connor McDavid at least a couple of times a year as well.